Welcome. My name is Kenny Yu. Today I'm going to be showing a quick demo on how to configure Database Watcher using SQL Authentication. Uh, this this currently is a monitoring tool that is currently supported for Azure SQL Database and Managed Instance. Here's I'm going through scrolling down the documentation on what is needed. The feature is free to use. You get a dashboard. There's some costs associated with the depending on your bandwidth, your Azure Data Explorer cluster. With this demo, I'll be using a free uh, Azure Data Explorer cluster, and I'll show you how to set that up as we go through the demo. There are several prerequisites that I need to go through, and we'll talk about that and what it is. So, a couple of prerequisites we need to get configured or added before we start with the database watcher. We need to add several resource providers, the database watcher, the Custo, and the network. And since I'm using SQL Auth for the authentication from database watcher to manage instance, I will need to add Key Vault. And also, it's good to have a if you do not have a Key Vault currently configured, just go ahead and deploy one with RBAC permissions. And also for the Key Vault, we also need the role Key Vault secret RBAC role for the database watcher. And now, and also if you're not using the free ADX cluster, then we'll have to use a premium, which could be deployed. It just makes things a lot easier when we're going through the deployment.
All right, so here I'm at my subscription. First thing is in the prerequisite is I need to add the resource providers. Let me just do that quickly and just show you how to do it. I'm going to go into my subscription, going down to the resource provider. I'm just going to type in I believe it's Database Watcher. Register that, and then I'm going to do network, Microsoft Network. Okay, so that was right. Register. I'm gonna do that, and then also I think this Crystal uh, register, and then I'm also gonna need Key Vault. Oh, that's registered, so I should be good. I'm gonna pause the video for a minute, let that finish registering, and we're gonna go to the next step of deploying Database Watcher.
Okay, it looks like my resource providers were registered. So I'm going to just go and type in Database Watcher in the search bar. And then I'm going to go and create Database Watcher. Uh, yeah, let me just see. Let me just create Database Watcher. Database Watcher. And then I'm gonna just use the default region. I'm gonna hit next. I'm gonna leave the system assign identity. The reason is it's just a lot easier to um, for permissions, and so I'm just gonna leave that for default. You can definitely use user assigned identity if you like. Just for this demo, I'm just gonna use the system assigned identity. The data store, I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna select the data store. I'm gonna use the free tier. So what I'm gonna do is this gonna so I'm just gonna change ADX free cluster and database watcher, and then I'm gonna use South Central by clicking. Yep, and that's how you get the free tier. I'm just gonna hit next. Oh, I'm sorry, create and select. That was deploy. I'm gonna leave the SQL target off for now. I'll add that back later. Just I just don't have a managed instance deploy on this subscription, and it's if you do, you just go in here and you'll just have a managed instance, and you'll just select the managed instance, and just if I just had one, I'd be just a SQL MI, and then I'm gonna use SQL authentication. Visual Studio. I'm sorry, not Visual, but like my subscription, and then where the for instance, if I was sitting in this resource group, I'm going to use the Key Vault. Remember, I'm using SQL Authentication where I need to have a Key Vault. So the I think the secret name for the login is not actual the username, it's the name of the secret. So I could just say database watcher user right here, and then for the password, I am not. It's not the actual password. It's actually the secret, the name of the secret name of the password. So it's not the actual password. So that I think that's where the confusion is. So when we go into the Key Vault to create that, we're just going to use the same name for the secret name and also the login. So right here, I'm just going to say password, for instance. So this is really important to know, to remember. I'll show you that in a later demo where how to create those. So I'm going to go next. And I'm going to create. All right, so I'm gonna pause for a minute, and once that's done, we'll jump back in, and we're gonna add this the SQL target, and go from there.
All right, so it looks like my database watcher was deployed successfully. I'm gonna just go in quickly, just make sure everything looks good. My cluster is good. Then what I'm gonna do is, remember earlier I did not add a SQL target. So what I'm gonna do now is go ahead and add that SQL target. So I'm gonna just go select manage instance in my subscription, and I believe is this one. I'm gonna use a public, just to make it simple here. And then I'm going to use a SQL Auth, like I explained earlier, and what I need to know, where's my Key Vault. So I think I have one already, so I'm just going to use the existing Key Vault I have deployed in another resource group. So what I'm going to do is just remember, again, this is the name of the secret, not the actual username. It could be the same, but for me, I'll just use something more generic here. And then what I'm gonna do here is just put password. It's very important to remember that, because I'm gonna add those keys, those names back into the secret in our Key Vault. So let me just go ahead and add that, and that should take a few minutes. I'll be right. I'll pause this video and I'll be right back on that. All right, so here I'm at my Key Vault. So I need to add those two secrets, and I need to set the permissions where the database watchers can be able to access those secrets to log into the SQL MI. So first thing first, I'm gonna go ahead and just assign the role. I believe is the let me just check my notes here. It's the Key Vault secret, our back row. So I'm gonna just go ahead and add a assignment and look for the Key Vault. This is the user, and then I'm gonna look for the database watcher to give that access. Here, I'm gonna set that here. I'm gonna assign that. View and assign. Okay, so it's that is assigning. Remember, I had to create two generic users. So I think the first one was DB Watcher user, and the second one was DB Watcher PW. I'm sorry, the DB Watcher user. So right here is where I put in the actual username for the DB Watcher, which I'm going to use DB Watcher. Okay, and just to create that, so just make sure I typed it in correctly, because if not, it'll probably give the wrong name. All right, so I'm gonna make sure I know that, and I'm gonna create that secret here. So now you see that that's the name that I entered earlier. I think the second one was DB Watcher PW, And I'm going to put in my very secret password here, which is going to get, and I'm going to create that. All right. So there you have it. That's the Key Vault section. And then we have to make some changes on the SQL Server, the SQL MI side to add those users and the permissions. Okay, so before I start adding the user and the permissions that is needed, first, if I go back to the documentation on the create configured for SQL Database Watcher, the first thing I'll notice there's the Entra authenticated watchers, which is using on Entra. And the second one is SQL authenticated watchers. I'm going to copy this code. What I need is the username, the password, and then I'm just copy and paste everywhere.
Okay, so I copy and paste. I just replaced the username, the actual username I'm going to use that I created in my Key Vault, not the secret name, and also the password that I added in the secret. So with this, these are the permission that is needed, and then once you create that, and that be it. So here it's been successfully created. All right, we'll see you on the next step.
All right, so I'm back into my Azure Database Watcher. So the one last step is to add the permissions to the cluster, and so you can actually click here. Have this on the Azure Data Explorer. In the documentation, there's going to be at the end, there's going to be a syntax that we can copy. So I'm going to just copy that. This is the Azure database, the Data Explorer database. So what I'm going to do is just type in database watcher, and the identity ID is the manage instant GUID. So if I go back here, I'm just going to believe it's this guy here. I'm just going to add that identity. And then the domain where it sits. What I can do is just, let me see if I just grab the tenant ID, or I could just use the DNS name. So just grab that, run it. So now I can see that the permission's been added.
Okay, so one way to check after the permissions been added and the database watchers has been started is you can tell is you're going to get a bunch of tables created here. If you don't get any tables, that means the permission, there's some issue with the permissions and it wasn't added correctly. So I'll just kind of retrace my steps. So once those steps are created, and remember, the DB watchers needs to be started first. So once I go in here, it's started. You may have to, for troubleshooting, maybe stop and start once or twice just to refresh the metadata in here. Once you get it started, I will see a one. I only have one SQL Managed instance that is getting monitored. And then when I click in here, once I get some more data, it'll start populate some dashboards. So I think some are starting to show up. So there you have it. This is a quick intro on how to deploy SQL Database Watcher on Azure.